Thank you, Rebecca, for your help today.
You're
so we're
welcome.
going to move on to the mandible. The mandible is your jawbone. Mandible. It's the only movable bone of your head. All right. So the mandible has the mandibular condyle, which makes its way up to. Yep. So the mandibular condyle. It's also called the condylar process, and so that is what articulates with the temporal bone in the mandibular fossa. You recall. And we have the angle, the ramus, the alveolar processes. There should be about 16 of them, and so that's the little sockets into which your teeth sit. The mental foramina. The mental foramina are going to be the places where you have nerves that come out, and this is what your dentist will be targeting when they want to numb the front part of your mouth, like your lower teeth, I guess, in the front. And then the last of these is the mandibular foramina. So the mandibular foramina, go ahead and pull the jaw off. For this one, you have to go all the way to the back, and yeah, exactly. So when your dentist gives you the shot way in the back of your mouth, that is the nerve that they're targeting. So these are some, can you even see it from this? I don't know. Can you turn it so, I don't know. Yeah, okay, there it is. So it's a nerve that comes out way to the back of your jaw there. And that's the mandible. The next structure we're going to take a look at is the vomer or vomer. Ooh, now this makes up, you might recall that the perpendicular process of the ethmoid bone makes up part of your nasal septum up here. That's the ethmoid bone. Down here, that is your vomer or vomer. So that's your nasal septum. Those two bones make up your nasal septum that separates your nasal passage into left and right parts. Next up, let's look at the maxilla, a very underrated portion of the face. This is kind of the keystone bone of your face. The maxillary bone or the maxilla. The first structures we're going to look at is the infraorbital foramina. The holes here and here, yep. So the infraorbital, you might recall that we had the supraorbital foramina up above. These are the infraorbital foramina. So there are nerves that come out of these holes that give feeling to your face and also help to move the muscles of your face. We also have alveolar processes, again where your teeth sit. And then if we are able to tip it up here, we'll be able to see the palatine process. Now, the bony palate, which is the roof of your mouth, has two parts to it. The anterior 2/3, it's really very subtle, so you have to be careful about this. The anterior 2/3 is a portion of the maxillary bone or the maxilla, and that's called the palatine process. All right, the next bone we'll look at is the zygomatic bone. This is your cheekbone.
I guess this will be the best.
Yeah. So the zygomatic bone is right here. It's actually a very small bone. You'll notice that there is a suture here. You recall that this is the zygomatic process of the temporal bone. This is the temporal process of the zygomatic bone, and together they make the zygomatic arch, and this is your cheekbone. So the zygomatic bone right there. And there is a left and right there. The nasal bone. Oops, oh my gosh. Technically there's a left and a right nasal bone, so let's take a look at that. Sort of a flat bone towards the,
All right.
yeah, don't worry. So the nasal bone is going to be right here. Sorry, it's okay. There's technically a left and a right, but they are fused at birth, so there's the nasal bone. The lacrimal bone is going to be, the term lacrimal refers to tear producing. So in this case, you have a little scoop, a tiny, tiny little bone right in that area. Now, a misunderstanding is oftentimes that students think that tears are produced here. That is not in fact the case. Tears actually drain here. So they can drain there. Can you see the hole, the nasal lacrimal duct? So there's a tiny little hole there, and what happens is when you produce tears, they're actually produced way up here by the lacrimal gland, like inside of here. And then the tears sweep across your eyes, and they end up kind of in this scoop, and they end up draining into the nasal lacrimal duct, into your nasal cavity. And then when there are too many and they kind of fill up, whatever, then they spill over. And last of the bones we're going to look at is the palatine bone. And this is a tricky bone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the lab version of this. Right? So this is the palatine bone, like isolated. We don't actually have any separated palatine bones. This is also misspelled. It's palatine without an N there. And so let's take a look at what that actually looks like in the skull here. So the first part of this you're going to be looking at is the horizontal process, which is the posterior 1/3 of your bony palate. And then it makes its way up, and there's two parts that go up, and they make up a portion of your, yep, exactly. They make up a portion of your, the lateral edges of your nasal passages. So you can kind of see the similarity there and compare.